Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum student. How are you? This is your lecture number 2, History for class 8th. Today I am going to teach you chapter number 1, Consolidation of British Rule. This is the continuation of lecture number 1. After this lecture, student will be able to understand the objectives and results of the British education policy. The salient features of colonial economic policy, the measures for social transformation, the advantages and implications of communication network. In previous lecture, we learned about the establishment of British rule. When British rule started, they introduced different reforms to make their rule more strong in subcontinent. First of all, they introduced their educational policies, in which they replaced the local language with English so they can eradicate the roots of previous rulers. They adopted Western education here because they needed some people who can understand their commands and serve for them. They specially introduced formal education system. Before this, natives were used to take their educations from pathshalas or madrasas. Lord Macaulay. Lord Macaulay was British historian and politician. He was appointed as head of Educational Committee of Government in subcontinent. He gave his educational policy in 1835. And the major point of his policy was Persian language should be replaced by English as an official language. He emphasized to abolish Arabic and Sanskrit as languages. He believed not to spend a single penny on Eastern education. His aim was to promote the Western education and science in subcontinent. He also emphasized on English language as a medium of instruction for education instead of local languages. He believed that the purpose of education was to induct the people into civil service. And in his own words, Minute on Education, which aimed at producing a class of persons Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, in opinion, in morals and intellect. According to law, after 20 years, new law was to be needed. So, at that time, Charles Wood was the president of Board of Control of East India Company. He presented his educational plan in 1854, which was known as Wood's Dispatch. And the major point of his policy was an education department, a government college, and a model high school were to be established in each province of subcontinent. Number 2, he suggested to set up universities in the cities of Bombay, Calcutta, and Madras on the pattern of University of London. He was a little bit lenient. He gave the idea that primary education would be imparted in local languages. He suggested the native people might establish their educational institution by adopting official syllabus and educational system. And if the institution which would follow the government syllabus would be eligible for government grants. Institutions for teacher training would be established and training of teacher would be imparted in local languages. Last but not least, schools and colleges for the education of women would be open. policy of British government. After the educational policy, British gave another policy, which was about economics of subcontinent. The major interest of British was revenue. So they introduced the system of railway and roads. They need special way of communication because they wanted to communicate all over the subcontinent. They also developed canal system and bridges were constructed over canals. Because subcontinent was source of raw material for Britishers. So they introduced canal system which can help Indians to improve their farming and could produce more material for Britishers because we were the source of raw material for them. The British government introduced new system of tax, measurement and weight and new currency. A law of ownership of properties was introduced. Free trade was encouraged and the import duty on clothes was reduced. In this way, Indians started more trade with Britishers. This was again beneficent for British. The government improved the system of civil service. They made civil servant more strong, more powerful, so they can rule easily on natives. The economic policy had effects on natives and they were not positive because subcontinent became main source of raw material for British industry. They used to purchase cotton on lower price from India and imported items were sold on high price to the natives. They were exporting richness to Britain and were importing poverty to India. The industry of India was being destroyed and unemployment began to increase day by day. Because of this, local got disturbed, but British government, instead of solving the problems of native, made more harsh laws to suppress the public opinion, which caused severe reaction among the natives. Even the British Parliament started criticizing the laws, discriminating the local people. Now, our next topic is social reform. Social reforms of British government. British government took many steps to improve the society. And the first thing was the caste system. The caste system divides Hindus into four main categories. Number 1, Brahmins. Number 2, Kshatriya. Number 3, Vaishya. And number 4, Shudras. They believe that the groups originated from Brahmas, the Hindu god of creation. As you can see in the picture, they have marked Brahma's head for Brahmins. So they were respectable, brainy people, priests. Number 2, Kshatriyas, from shoulders. They were warriors and rulers, and they were for the protection of the land and area. Number 3, Vaishya, was from stomach, so they belonged to farming to fulfill the requirement of food. Number 4, Shudras, from feet, so they don't have any respect. They were lower class and even their shadow couldn't fall on superiors. If it happened, Shudras badly punished for this sin. Basically, it was a trap for the poor people They couldn't get rid of it through all their lives. Once a person took birth in some caste, he could not come out of it. British government provided equal opportunities to all through the education and other reforms by which caste system was discouraged. Women education also brought in social changes and reforms. The second major reform of British government was prohibition of sati. What is sati? According to the ancient Hindu custom, sati symbolized closure of marriage. It was voluntary action in which, as a sign of being a dutiful wife, a woman followed her husband to the afterlife. It was therefore considered to be the greatest form of devotion of a wife toward her dead husband. So she burnt herself on the funeral of her husband, was known as sati. In 1829, Lord William Bentinck was prohibited sati in Bengal and declared it unlawful. Number two, the British government allowed the widows to remarry. However, sati continued religiously and culturally in some factions of Hindu society. Number three, the government also prohibited the killing of newborn babies and burying them alive. Hindus was not happy with this provision, so they took this issue to the court. An appeal was made in Privy Council of England, which decided to continue the provision of sati in 1832. Later on, the law was implemented throughout India. Major social reform of British government was control on underage marriages. A child under a certain age, the child can be girl or boy, but the large majority of child marriages were between a girl and a man and were rooted in gender inequality. Basically, they believed that women were economic burden for them. The Child Marriage Restraint Act 1929, passed on 28 September 1929 in Imperial Legislative Council of India, fixed the age of marriage for girls at 14, which was later amended to 18 for girls and 21 for boys. Fourth major reform was payment of marriage. In common language, we called it dowry. It was the tradition of India to pay fixed amount, gold or household things to boys by the parent of girls on the occasion of marriage. These practices create unrest, prolonged quarrel, other problems in Indian society, as the parents were worried about their daughters. The British government had abolished this cruel and inhuman tradition. Development of communication system during the British rule. Although the post office was established in 1837, first stamp was introduced in 1852. The Indian postal system developed into an extensive, dependable and robust network, providing connectivity to the almost all part of India because it was very much necessary for Britishers. So in 1887, General Post Office was established in Lahore. A close coordination was developed among different departments for the success of this system. The British government was improved the telegram system. The British government had established the communication system for their benefit. However, the people of subcontinent also got benefit from it. The increased interaction and exchange of things among the people resulted in trade development. The postal telecommunication system was positive effect on local people. The second thing, the major mean of communication was important for the economic development and stability of a country was railway. During British period, railway was fastest mean of communication. Therefore, always lines were spread all over the subcontinent. Number 2, railway stations were established in important cities. Number 3, railway gates were constructed on railway crossing to facilitate the citizens. Number 4, the British government arranged the timetable of railway and introduced the ticketing system, which gave them revenue. Through these steps, the confidence of the people increased toward railways, and they preferred to travel through. The next way of communication was roads. The British government improved the existing roads and constructed new roads throughout the subcontinent. They developed bus stands and trained the staff to facilitate the passenger. The step taken by government made the journey easier. Some historians said British did it for themselves, but the common man was also got benefited from these steps. Okay beta, here we ended with British reforms. There are the questions which are important and you have to answer them. Question number 1. How many castes were there in Hindu society? Write their names. You will write the number of the castes and their names. Question number 2. Which was the official language before British rule? You have just write the name of the previous official language. Question number 3. Write a note on the colonial economic policy of the British government. This is your long question, so you have to write the answer in detail and you will get the answer of this question on page number 5. Question number 4. The British government brought which social changes for the reforms of Indian society? This is also a long question and you will get the answer on page number 6 and 7. Home assignment is necessary. It will be checked by your teacher when school reopens. Thank you so much, bache. Thanks a lot.